Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Let's dive right into today's stories. The first one is an entitled people tale. Moving into my new house was meant to be a fresh chapter for me. After years of squeezing into cramped city apartments, I'd finally scraped together enough cash to buy a little fixer-upper in the quiet suburbs. Sure, it needed some TLC, but I was thrilled to have my own place. A backyard, no shared walls, my own piece of the American dream. That is, until I met my nightmare neighbor, Linda. From the moment I moved in, Linda was a problem. She seemed to have her eyes glued to my house, nitpicking every tiny thing I did. At first, it was just snarky remarks about my landscaping or the shade of blue I picked for my front door. I brushed it off. But then, one day, a police car rolled up to my house. Confused, I stepped outside to meet the officer, who told me someone had reported unpermitted construction on my property. I explained that all I'd done was build a small raised garden bed, hardly a big deal. He apologized for the hassle and left. A few days later, I bumped into Linda outside, and she casually mentioned how disappointed she was that the cops didn't ticket me. That's when it clicked. She was the one who'd called them with that ridiculous complaint. When I called her out, she played it off, saying she was just a concerned neighbor looking out for the neighborhood. Over the next few weeks, the police visits ramped up over the dumbest things. Linda called them when my grass grew a tiny bit too long, reported my car as abandoned while it was parked in my driveway, and even filed a noise complaint when I had friends over for a backyard barbecue. Each time, the officers showed up, apologized for the wasted trip, and a couple even told me they knew exactly who was behind these petty calls. Turns out, Linda was infamous around here. As the head of the Homeowners Association Board, she wielded her self-proclaimed power like a tyrant. It was irritating, but I tried to keep things civil. I started following every HOA rule to the letter, hoping to avoid giving her more ammo. But Linda's vendetta had gone way beyond bylaws. This went on for months until one day I came home to find two police cruisers and an unmarked car parked out front. I got out of my car, heart pounding, and two detectives approached me with a warrant to search my house. They said they'd gotten a tip about drug activity, citing frequent visitors and package deliveries. I was stunned. I don't even touch drugs, and I barely drink. They tore through my house and, of course, found nothing. They apologized again, explaining they had to act on a detailed tip from a concerned resident. That night, Linda was conveniently watering her lawn when I got back. She smirked and asked how my day went. That was it. I was done playing nice with this psycho who was trying to ruin my life. The next morning, I marched to the police station and filed a report for harassment, stalking, and filing false claims. I handed over all the records I'd kept of her nonsense. The sergeant was shocked and promised they'd look into it and talk to Linda. Apparently, that talk didn't go well, because 2 days later, Linda lost it. She showed up at my door, screaming hateful slurs and banging on it. Before I could even respond, she grabbed a rock from my garden and chucked it through my front window. The crash of glass was quickly followed by police sirens. Her meltdown was the final straw. They arrested her on the spot for vandalism and verbal assault, and with my documentation, she later faced charges for all those fake reports. In the end, justice prevailed. Linda got 6 months in jail, a felony record, and lost her HOA position. The neighborhood's been blissfully quiet since she's been gone. I lost a few months dealing with her crap, but standing up to a bully like her was worth it. Reporting her was the best move I could have made, even if it took longer than I'd hoped. Her own lies and violence landed her behind bars, and I finally got to enjoy my home in peace. Next up, a pro-revenge story. This happened earlier today, and it's too good not to share. I'm a construction foreman working on a new house build. The site's a bit weird. It's 250 feet up a hill, accessible only by a footpath. We have to haul every single material up by hand, which is a nightmare. Our one saving grace is 2 parking spots at the bottom of the hill, marked with official no parking signs. Problem is, there's an elementary school nearby, and parents constantly park there, twice a day, at least. I'm pretty laid back. If someone's parked there and we don't need the spots, I let it slide. But if we've got a delivery or need to park a truck, I'll politely ask them to move, and usually, they do. Until today. I got a call from a lumber truck driver saying he'd be there in a few minutes with the materials to frame the house's roof. Big, heavy stuff that'd take an hour to haul up. I told him I'd clear the spots. As I headed down the hill, I saw a mom idling in one of our spaces. Assuming she was just waiting for her kid, I tapped on her window and nicely explained it was a no parking zone and we needed it for a delivery. She scoffed, rolled her eyes, and said, "I'll only be a few minutes. Your truck's not even here. Chill out." Before I could say anything, the lumber truck rounded the corner. I waved to the driver, then pointed at him to show her. She rolled her window up, ignoring me. I smiled politely and asked again, a bit firmer, reminding her she was in a tow-away zone. Then she snapped, "Can't you just unload around me? It's not that hard." That gave me an idea. I grinned, walked over to the driver, and told him to park as close to her as possible, boxing her in with the porta potty on one side and another car on the other. He caught on instantly and pulled off a perfect maneuver, trapping her in a little parking spot prison. We started unloading the lumber, and my crew got to work hauling it up the hill. Meanwhile, I called parking enforcement to report it, not to get her in trouble, just to cover ourselves with the city. The officer said she'd be there in 30 minutes. Perfect. As we worked, the mom's kid showed up, and she realized she couldn't get out her driver's door. She awkwardly climbed over to the passenger side, glaring at me and the driver as she stumbled out. She loaded her kid in the back, then stormed over, yelling, "I'm in a hurry. Move your damn truck now." The driver, grinning, said, "Ma'am, company policy says I can't move the truck with an unsecured load." Sorry. She was fuming, and I was struggling not to laugh. Right then, the parking officer pulled up. Before she could even step out, I casually said to the mom, "Can't you just pull out around it? It's not that hard," throwing her words back at her with a huge grin. She screamed, "Forget you," and stomped back to her car. Then she slammed it into reverse, smashed into the porta potty, knocking it over, and tried to drive over the curb. She got stuck halfway, yelling curses from inside. The officer, driver, and I just stared, dumbfounded. The cop ordered her out, cuffed her, and called for backup. She sat on the curb she'd tried to climb, yelling that we'd told her she could stay and never asked her to move. The officer shut her down, saying she'd been called when the mom first refused. By the end, she was arrested for child endangerment. Her kid was in the car the whole time, reckless driving, property damage, and driving on a suspended license. Her car got towed, her kid went with grandma, and she went to jail. I didn't expect her to actually try driving out, but maybe next time she'll think twice about parking in a tow-away zone if she ever gets a license again. Now, a petty revenge story. I was hired to create ads for a local cosmetics startup. I usually avoid local clients after some bad experiences, but this woman, Sarah, seemed willing to pay, so I took the gig. I charged her just $60 a week, way less than the $300 I charge foreign clients. The first 2 weeks went fine. She gave me what I needed despite her tight budget. But in week 3, she flipped out, demanding 1,000 clicks a day on the ads. That's insane. Her budget only got about 1,200 reaches daily. I explained she'd need to pay more for that, and she called me a fraud, even though my ads were pulling 300 clicks a day. Then she refused to pay for the last 2 weeks and ghosted me. I think she even blocked my number. Stupidly, she didn't kick me off her ad account. So I got petty. Her ads were still running, and I swapped the images for a text post. "Don't buy from this company." The owner refused to pay me and called me a fraud for not meeting her absurd demands. I added screenshots of our chats as proof. I did it late at night, expecting her to blow up my phone soon. Done with her, I figured she could keep the $120 she owed me. I was over local clients for good. Update: yesterday afternoon, I saw the ads had reverted to normal, and then my account showed a payment error, meaning she'd canceled the card. Annoyed, I vented anonymously in a social media marketing Philippines group, subtly warning other freelancers about her without naming her company, just saying it was cosmetics. The group backed me up. This morning, Sarah texted me, furious, saying she'd sue for defamation. I pointed out I hadn't named her and had proof she didn't pay, plus our chats could bury her legally. I also mentioned my uncle's a regional judge and my family's politically connected, not lies. She didn't believe me until I told her to Google my grandpa's name, which has a Wikipedia page. She went quiet. An hour later, I said she could just pay me the $120 or I'd use my family's pull to tank her business. She paid instantly. I thanked her, blocked her, and moved on. Next, a malicious compliance story. I worked for a big IT consulting firm that never paid overtime. I led the functional migration team for a client's project for nearly 18 months. My team of 3 had worked with the client for 3 years prior, so we knew the data inside out. 2 weeks before the migration, we'd moved and validated 99% of it, just handling daily updates. Another manager, Rachel, who outranked me, was pissed at how calm we were. Her team was drowning due to her bad planning, and everyone was overworked because of it. Migration day was a Saturday at 9 a.m. Everyone expected a long haul, but my team clocked out at noon, data validated, client approved. We got a commendation from the client. Rachel's team was there all weekend and got a complaint letter. She whined about us, and for the next month, she had me and my senior analyst twiddling our thumbs waiting for incidents. We got 5 total. My analyst studied a new language, and I polished my resume. I wanted out. At evaluation time, despite the client's praise, Rachel and her buddy, my mentor, gave me a C, saying I lacked pressure and motivation. I complained and took a planned month off in June. When I returned, Rachel's husband, Tom, put me on a new project, 122 integrations in 4 months. I told him Rachel's last project took 2 years for 12, but I'd try. I emailed him proof of that timeline. July and August were slow. Everyone, including Tom and Rachel, was on vacation. I chased people around, but by September, 6 integrations were done, 6 more nearly there. Tom came back, called me a slacker, and demanded I work until midnight for the rest of the project. I refused, saying I wouldn't work unpaid overtime and his plan was unrealistic. He flipped out. I said, I just lack motivation for your project. I want out. My mentor called, hinting they might fire me without pay. I showed her my email to Tom. She paused, asked what I wanted. I said severance, a clean exit making it look like I quit, and no more overtime threats. By day's end, I was out, grinning. Finally, another entitled people story. This one's from my friend, Jake, 21, who doesn't have Reddit. I'm writing it in first person with his approval. I dated Emily, 20, on and off since we were 15. It got serious during COVID when I moved back home, and we got an apartment. Soon, she started hanging out with her cousin a lot. Turns out, they were hooking up. We broke up 9 months ago. 7 of those. Her phone was on my plan, and she owes me over $500. She also took my car when we split. I let her, scared she'd try for the apartment too. 9 months post-breakup, she texted, I'm pregnant. I was driving home from work, didn't reply, not my issue anymore. She texted again, saying she and her boyfriend, the cousin, had nowhere to stay. She's never worked, living off his disability checks, spending it on weed and fast food. She never paid rent, documented. She claimed her name was still on the lease and they'd move in. I told her I'd renewed it last month without her name. She called me a jerk, saying she, her baby, and 3 dogs needed a place. My studio barely fits me, let alone them. I said no, I'm moving soon anyway, and she should get her stuff. She'd left here for 9 months. She refused, threatening charges if I tossed it. She called my landlord, saying I was moving out. Pissed, I told her the car's still in my name. Transfer it, or I'm taking it back. She cried, saying I was dooming her and her kid to homelessness. She also has a gun in my name I want back, or I'm calling the cops. I might repo the car, it's mine, and she doesn't deserve it. She needs a reality check. I hope the baby's okay, but Emily's a spoiled brat. Update. She's picking up her stuff and the gun tomorrow. If I get shot, I'll let you know. Latest update. She and her boyfriend came, returned the gun, got her stuff. He waved his own gun, demanding to be on the lease. I called the cops. They bolted. That's all for now. Thanks for reading. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. See you tomorrow.